When I walked into the house that evening, nothing felt unusual at first. My keys clattered onto the glass bowl near the entrance, and I kicked off my shoes, exhausted from a 10-hour shift. But then I saw Emily standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, chin lifted, a smug little smile that I had never seen on her face before. It wasn't nervousness. It wasn't sadness. It was triumph. "We need to talk," she declared before I could even greet her. "I want a divorce." For a moment, I genuinely thought she was joking. The words didn't register. Divorce? Out of nowhere, my chest tightened, heartbeat thudding so loudly I could hear it echo inside my ears. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She watched my confusion with a kind of twisted satisfaction. "You heard me," she said. "I'm done, and we're doing this my way." My mind spun, searching for something to hold on to. Anything. But she didn't give me time to breathe. "We need to discuss Lucy," she continued, referring to our 4-year-old daughter. "The divorce will be simple if you don't make it complicated. I keep the house. I keep the car. And you'll pay child support." Obviously, I just stared at her. This was the woman I once married in a small chapel in Oregon. The woman who cried when she read her vows. The woman who said I was her partner, her safe place. Now she was looking at me like she was negotiating with a stranger she despised. "You can't be serious," I whispered. "Oh, I'm very serious. And my lawyer is exceptional." She walked over to the coffee table and slid a small stack of papers toward me. "These are the initial terms. You'll get 2 weekends a month with Lucy. That's fair. Children need stability, and she's used to being with me." I recoiled like the papers were poisonous. 2 weekends? That's ridiculous. I'm not signing anything until I talk to an attorney. Emily rolled her eyes dramatically, as if I were a tantrum-throwing child. "You could try to fight it," she said in a mocking tone, "but the court always favors mothers. You know that. So don't embarrass yourself." She turned and walked toward the bedroom, already done with the conversation, already certain she had won. But inside, something in me hardened. If she expected me to roll over and surrender my daughter, she didn't know me at all. I stepped outside, sat in my car for a long minute, and called Tim Parker, an attorney a coworker recommended. I told him everything, from Emily's sudden declaration to the custody terms she demanded. "First," Tim said calmly, "breathe. Second, do not sign a single page she gives you. Third, if she wants to play hardball, we'll play harder." His confidence steadied me. He explained how joint custody could be pursued, how courts increasingly favored shared parenting, and how Emily's demands were nowhere near standard. He gave me a list of documents to gather: bank statements, mortgage records, tax returns. "Stay composed," he warned. "People do stupid things when emotions run high. She will try to bait you." He was right. The next week felt like walking through a minefield. Emily mocked me at every opportunity. If I cooked breakfast for Lucy, she made a snide comment about how a judge won't care that you flip pancakes. If she saw me reading legal articles online, she'd smirk and mutter, "You're wasting your time." I felt trapped. Legally, neither of us could force the other to move out yet, so we lived under the same roof, sleeping in separate rooms, barely speaking except to argue. It felt like punishment every day. One night at dinner, Emily slammed her fork down and said, "You need to move out. Immediately." "No," I said quietly but firmly. "This is Lucy's home. I'm not leaving her." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Fine. After the court hearing, I'll change the locks." She said it like a threat, and maybe it was meant to be one. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Lucy needed at least one stable parent, even if Emily was trying her hardest to destabilize everything. But the pressure didn't end at home. Work became unbearable. My boss, Mr. Grant, pulled me into his office after noticing my performance slipping. "You've missed deadlines," he said, frowning. "Your proposals are sloppy. I know you're dealing with personal issues, but you need to pull yourself together." I wanted to explain everything: the divorce, the custody fight, the emotional warfare, but the words stuck in my throat. I just nodded, promising I'd improve. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was juggling paperwork, caring for Lucy, fighting with Emily, and sleeping maybe 2 hours a night. A week later, Grant called me in again. "I'm sorry," he said with finality. "We have to let you go." I left the building numb. Empty. The financial pressure that had already been crushing suddenly became unbearable. How was I supposed to pay the mortgage? How was I supposed to afford child support? Emily's reaction? She laughed. Actually laughed. So you lost your job? Wow, that's unfortunate. The judge is going to love that. It wasn't pity. It wasn't concern. She enjoyed it. Soon after, she threatened to take me to court for missing a support payment, even though she knew I was unemployed. Days later, officers came to the house with a warrant. I was arrested for non-payment. Sitting in that cold, gray cell waiting for the hearing, I felt lower than I ever had in my life. The judge gave me 5 months. 5 months locked away like a criminal. 5 months away from Lucy. And the image that haunted me most wasn't the courtroom, wasn't the metal bars. It was Emily's smirk. The same one she wore the night she told me she wanted a divorce. I spent the first week in a crowded, smothering cell, lying on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every fight, every cruel comment, every threat. I wonder how everything had gone so wrong. Then, one afternoon, a guard called my name. "You got a letter," he said, tossing an envelope onto my lap. It was from Brandon, a close friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Inside was a single page. What he wrote shattered my world more than anything Emily had done before. The letter from Brandon shook me before I even finished reading it. His handwriting was hurried, uneven, as if he'd written it in a rush or with trembling hands. He told me he hadn't reached out earlier because he didn't want to interfere with my marriage, but after hearing I was in jail, he couldn't stay silent anymore. His words cut deeper with every line. Emily had been cheating on me. Not recently, not suddenly, for years. And then came the part that made my hands go numb, that Lucy might not be my daughter. He explained that people in our circle had whispered about Emily's behavior long before our marriage began to crumble. There had been rumors about her and a coworker named Cole, a man I barely knew. Brandon had overheard Emily bragging to a friend at a bar, bragging about how much financial benefit she got from being with me while seeing someone else on the side. I felt the world tilt. My chest tightened again, but this time with a deeper, darker weight than anything I'd felt when she first asked for a divorce. Lucy, my Lucy, the little girl who ran to me every morning shouting, "Daddy." The child I taught to ride a bike. The one whose hair I brushed before preschool, whose tears I wiped when she scraped her knee. The idea that she wasn't mine biologically felt like a knife twisting slowly. For the rest of my sentence, that thought lived in my mind like a shadow that followed me everywhere. In the cell, in the yard, at night, when I lay awake listening to the snores and arguments of the other inmates. I try to push it away. I try to tell myself that Emily wasn't capable of something that cruel. But she was. I knew that now. On the day of my release, I walked out with a single cardboard box and clothes that hung looser on me after months inside. Waiting outside the gate was Daniel Hartman, the lawyer Tim had referred me to after I'd exhausted all options. He shook my hand firmly. "Let's get to work," he said. We went to a quiet cafe near the courthouse, and I told him everything. The divorce, the custody battle, the job loss, Emily's threats, and finally Brandon's letter. Daniel listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back, folding his hands. "There are 2 paths," he said. 1, you focus on rebuilding and let the past die. 2, you fight. You pursue legal action for fraud, emotional distress, and illicit financial gain. I stared at my coffee, hands trembling slightly. "I need to know the truth," I whispered. "I need a paternity test." Daniel nodded. "We'll file for it immediately." 2 weeks later, I found myself at the Crescent Medical Clinic, sitting in the waiting room while my leg bounced restlessly. Emily walked in with Lucy a few minutes later, late as usual. Lucy's face lit up when she saw me. She ran over and wrapped her small arms around my waist. "Daddy, Daddy, look. I drew you a picture." She handed me a crayon drawing of the 3 of us holding hands in front of a house with a bright yellow sun in the sky. My throat tightened painfully. Emily stood behind her, arms crossed, wearing that same derisive smirk she always seemed to reserve just for me. "You're seriously doing this?" she scoffed under her breath. "You've hit rock bottom." I ignored her, focusing on Lucy. The nurse called us back, and we followed her to a small room. She explained the process, a simple cheek swab, painless, quick. Lucy giggled when the swab brushed the inside of her cheek. That tickles. Emily watched the entire procedure with an air of boredom, like she was enduring a mild inconvenience rather than something that could uproot lives. When it was my turn, I sat still as the nurse performed the same process. Emily smirked again. "I hope you're ready to look stupid," she whispered. "You're going to owe me a huge apology." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say to her. We left the clinic separately. Lucy blew me a kiss as Emily dragged her toward the parking lot. I watched them go until my vision blurred. 3 days later, I received a call from Daniel. "The results are in," he said. "Come to my office." My stomach dropped to the floor. When I arrived, Daniel handed me the envelope. My hand shook as I tore it open. The room felt too small, too silent, too bright. I scanned the page, line by line, word by word. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. 0. The number slammed into me like a freight train. My vision tunneled. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. The page slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. Daniel's voice sounded distant. "I am sorry." I pressed both hands against my skull, as if I could push the reality out of my mind. Lucy wasn't mine. Emily had lied to me, manipulated me, built an entire life, our life on deception. Everything I knew, everything I fought for, everything I lost, had been based on a lie. A raw, broken sound escaped my throat, something between a gasp and a sob. I hadn't cried in years, not even during the divorce, not when I was arrested, not even in that cold prison cell. But now the pain was too much to contain. When I finally calmed enough to speak, I whispered, "I'm going to sue her." Daniel nodded firmly. "We'll begin immediately." We filed a lawsuit for fraud, emotional abuse, misappropriation of funds, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Daniel compiled everything: the paternity results, the receipts of every payment I had made, Brandon's letter, text messages Emily had sent during the divorce. The court hearing was scheduled for the following month. On the day of the trial, Emily arrived wearing an expensive blazer, looking confident and unbothered. Her lawyer, a man named Crawford, strutted beside her like he was auditioning for a courtroom drama. But confidence is fragile when it's built on lies. When our case began, Daniel presented everything with precision. He laid out the timeline, the financial records, the test results. He showed evidence of Emily's manipulation, her threats, her mocking messages. Crawford attempted to object repeatedly, but the judge silenced him each time. Then Brandon testified. He took the stand and recounted everything he had heard, including Emily bragging that being with me paid better than her job. He revealed that Cole, the man people suspected, had privately admitted to him that he and Emily had been together on and off for years. Emily's face went pale. It was the first time I saw fear crack the mask she always wore. When the judge called for a recess, she glared at me with pure venom, as if this entire situation were somehow my fault. When we resumed, the judge delivered a verdict that would change everything. When the judge finally returned and the courtroom settled into silence, I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. Emily sat stiffly beside her attorney, her jaw tight, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. For once, she wasn't smirking. She wasn't rolling her eyes or whispering sarcastic comments under her breath. She looked scared. The judge adjusted her glasses and spoke clearly, her voice carrying through the room like a sharp blade. After reviewing the evidence presented, she began, including financial documentation, witness testimony, and the paternity test results. This court finds Emily Carter guilty of fraud, misrepresentation, and intentional emotional harm. Emily's head jerked up. "What? No, that's—" "Ms. Carter," the judge cut in sharply. "You will remain silent unless spoken to." Her attorney tried to stand, but the judge stopped him with a single raised hand. "It is the decision of this court," she continued, "that all child support payments previously collected under false representation must be refunded. Additionally, the matter will be forwarded to the criminal division for further proceedings." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Emily's face drained of color. The judge leaned forward, her words final and cold. "Pending criminal review, this court sentences Ms. Carter to 3 years in state custody." Emily gasped, as if someone had punched the air out of her lungs. No, no, please. I'm a mother, she cried, her voice cracking. The judge didn't blink. You are a manipulator, Miss Carter, and you have abused the system, your marriage, and this man. Bailiffs, take her into custody. Two officers approach her. Emily tried to step back, but there was nowhere to go. She shot me a look, a mixture of hatred, fear, and disbelief. Then she was handcuffed and escorted through the side door of the courtroom. I stood frozen, breathing shallowly. I thought I would feel triumph, vindication, satisfaction. Instead, I just felt empty. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. It's over, he said quietly. But I knew that wasn't entirely true. There was still Lucy. After the verdict, the judge addressed that separately. Since the biological father was unknown and Emily was no longer capable of caring for her, temporary custody was granted to me. Not because I had rights, but because Lucy needed stability until the state could determine her future. I walked out of the courthouse feeling both crushed and relieved. I had lost Emily long before this, but losing Lucy, even symbolically, felt like someone had carved a hole in my chest. For weeks, I visited my parents' home every day. They had agreed to care for Lucy during the legal process. When I arrived, she always ran toward me full speed, arms open, ready to be held. She didn't understand any of it. She didn't know why Mommy was gone, why Daddy didn't live with her anymore. She only knew that she loved me. One night, after I tucked her in, she looked up at me, eyes wide. Daddy, do you still love me? Even if Mommy says you don't. I felt something inside me break. I cupped her small cheek gently. I will always love you, I whispered. Always. She smiled softly and squeezed my hand before drifting to sleep. A few weeks later, with the help of an old co-worker, I found a new job. Modest but stable. Life started to rebuild itself one tiny piece at a time. Lucy adapted surprisingly well. My mother helped her with routines, packed her lunches, braided her hair. My father played board games with her every evening. She filled the house with laughter again. Then, one morning, I received a letter from the courthouse. Emily had filed a petition for restoration of parental rights, claiming she deserved custody once released. Daniel met with me immediately. We'll contest it, he assured. She has no case, and the judge knows that. During the hearing, Emily appeared via video from the correctional facility. She looked worn down, hair messy, eyes hollow. But the entitlement was somehow still there. She stole my daughter, she complained. I deserve to raise Lucy. The judge didn't even allow her to finish before dismissing the motion with visible irritation. Ms. Carter, the judge said sharply, you endangered your child's stability and abused the legal system. Custody will remain with Mr. Walker until further evaluation. Your request is denied. Emily slammed her hands on the desk in front of her, shouting, This isn't fair. He ruined my life. But her words were cut off when a guard muted the microphone. Daniel leaned over to me and whispered, She's losing power. She knows it. And he was right. For the first time, Emily wasn't in control. After the hearing, I went home exhausted, relief settling slowly into my bones. Lucy was building a tower out of wooden blocks when I arrived. She turned, saw me, and ran over. Daddy, you're home, she squealed. I lifted her into my arms, holding her tightly. Yeah, I murmured against her hair. I'm home. There are still legal steps ahead. Custody evaluations. Social workers. More hearings. The identity of Lucy's biological father might never be discovered. Nothing about this path would be simple. But for the first time in years, the future felt calm, manageable, full of possibility. That night, after Lucy fell asleep, I sat outside with my parents. The air was cool. Crickets sang softly in the distance. My mom placed her hand over mine. You did the right thing, she said. My father nodded. You protected Lucy. That's what matters. For the first time, I believed it. I looked toward the house, where the warm lights glowed softly through the windows, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. My life had fallen apart in every possible way. Betrayal, humiliation, jail, poverty, heartbreak. But somehow, the truth had finally come alight. Justice, in its own brutal way, had prevailed. Emily was gone. The lies were gone, and in their place was something real, something worth fighting for. Lucy, my daughter not by blood, but by love. My future, my new beginning. Whatever came next, I knew this time I wouldn't face it alone. I had family, I had clarity, and I finally had my life back.